Good morning, students. We'll be doing active and passive once again. I told you while doing this that we'll do the interrogative sentences after completing, asking questions. So once again, quickly, let's recap what has been done in asking questions. Do you remember how many types of questions do you have? Basically two types, right? So what are they? The WH questions and the yes or no questions. So WH, they begin with the question word WH. Like what are they? What, when, where, who, whom, whose, even how is considered as a WH, why. Okay, so all these WH words, to get specific information. So we start a question with this. They usually come in the beginning of the question, like what is your name? What are you doing? Okay. So even in the active voice, we begin the question with the WH words. Right. Then when you transform them into the passive voice also, once again you will have the WH word in the beginning, but the whatever changes took place when you were changing statements from active to passive, same things will be applied even here. So once again, we'll look what happens when you're doing this. Then yes and no questions also. There are certain rules to be followed, with the models and all that. So you will be learning how to transform interrogative sentences. What are interrogative sentences? Questions. So what is compulsory in an interrogative sentence? Question mark is compulsory. You should not forget the question mark, right? Now let's move on. So here, WH questions begin with question word. QW is the question word. Like what are the different words? Just now we have revised what, when, where. You remember what to ask about things, person, people, etc. When. Then when to ask about time. Okay, year, date, whatever. Then where to ask about location, place. Why to find out something about the reason. Who again for person. Whose, you know, position. How, mode, number. With all this you will use how. All right. And both in the active and passive voice, you will start with the same WH word. So you have the structure here. Usually with the W, that is the question word, you make use of the helping verb do, does, did. Especially for framing questions, do, does, did, these are used. Plus subject plus verb. And if you have an object, object is not always compulsory here. So if you have the object also will be used. And then question mark, don't forget the question mark. So what happens in the passive voice? Same question word. It begins with the same question word. You don't have to change the question word. There's only one change. Who changes to whom? I'll tell you once again when we come to that. So remember, like if it is what in the active voice, same what will be repeated in the passive voice. But when you have do, does, did, you will not repeat the same in the passive voice. Instead of that, you will replace those things, do, does, did, with am, is, are, depending upon your subject, the number, all that, and the tense. So you will replace do, does, did with am, is, are, was, were, any of these. Okay, one of these actually. Plus, if there is an object, you will use the object. Then you remember in all the passive forms, which verb form will you use? V3 form, past participle. Then the subject by the subject. Okay, something that becomes the agent. Subject becomes the agent in the passive voice. So it is done by them, by her. So that is how you will be using it. So here you have the example. How do you paint pictures? So look, WH word here is how. I think I've already explained to you, even though it begins with H here, still this is considered as a WH word. How do you paint pictures? So what is do? Do is the verb. You is your, the subject. Paint pictures. This is the active voice. So do is in which tense? Present tense. So replace it with present tense, be form verb. So pictures, again plural. So what should you use with pictures and in the present? Are. So how are pictures, and V3 of paint is painted. Okay, how are pictures painted? Who's the doer there? You. So by you becomes the agent. So this is how you will be transforming it in the passive voice. Then what did he do? Okay, so this is in the active voice. Here you have what, WH word, did, and then he is the subject there, do is the verb. So when you transform it, it becomes what, same WH word, was, and then what is the V3 form of do? Done by him. Okay, so this is how the transformation takes place when the question begins with a WH word, question word. So look at the next. Where does he eat food? Okay, so again it begins with same where. There's no change in that question word. And then does is in which tense? Present tense. So about whom are we speaking? He does. So when you transform it, it changes to the present be form. Where is, and the object, the food becomes, it comes here. Where is food? Eaten by him. Right. When do they collect the garbage? So do, present tense, same when. In the active it is when, in the passive also you will repeat when. There is no change in that. When is the garbage collected by them? Okay. So the next one. Why do you pluck flowers? Reason. Why? Same why you will repeat even in the passive voice. Why are flowers plucked by you? Why do you pluck? So by you becomes the agent, right? The next one is, this is the change that you have to remember. Who in the active voice changes to by whom in the passive voice. Example, who teaches you chemistry? So in the passive, it becomes by whom are you taught chemistry? Is it clear? So you can't have who are you taught chemistry. That will be meaningless. So what should you do when you transform? Who teaches you chemistry? Here you will change the who to whom. By whom are you taught? Because teachers is in the present, simple present. So are you taught chemistry in the passive voice? Is this clear? So these are the changes that take place when you transform WH question words. WH words are also known as the question words, from active to passive. Okay. Whose book have you taken? So whose book has been taken by you? You remember have, has, what do you do? You add been, B-E-E-N. So same rule here also. Same word, whose, there's no change. Book has been taken by you. How many oranges did you buy? How many oranges were bought by you? Okay, same, no change. All the question words in the active and the passive remain the same except for who. Who changes to whom. Is it clear? Now let's move on. Then you remember yes, no questions. How do you begin? Yes, no questions with be form usually. Am, is, are, was, were, isn't it? So are you teaching grammar? So what will happen here? Same, it will begin with again be form, but depending upon your subject. Is grammar, because that becomes your subject now. Is grammar, and what is the rule? Ing form, being will be introduced. Is grammar being taught by you? Okay. So you have to remember wherever you have ing and whenever it begins with are, is, all that, then you will introduce being in the passive voice. Were they playing football? So football singular. So how will you start your question? Was football being played, V3, by them? Okay. Then was he learning Spanish? Was Spanish being learnt by him? All right. So these are the changes. The next one, if the interrogative sentence here, directly they start with do, does, did. Okay, then what are the changes? You will change them to am, is, are, was, were, depending upon, which tense it is. In the active voice, which tense you're using. You will use the same tense in the passive voice. Do they teach them psychology? So do, your question begins with do, and which tense is indicated here? Present tense. So when you transform, you will use be forms. What is the present tense be form? Am is are. So here they is there. So you will change it to are. Are they taught psychology by them? Okay, V3 form teach, taught. Or taught. Does he deliver parcels? Does again, present. So are parcels delivered by him? Did they cut the branches? Did is the past tense, right? Where were the branches cut by them in the passive voice, right? Understood. Now, when the interrogative sentence begin with have, has, had, you remember the other helping verb? So when you have this in the active voice, same, again you will repeat. But this depends upon, again, the number. Either you will use have or has, depending upon the subject you change it to. Then the same rules will be followed. So what will you do here? Again, when you have, has, had in the active voice, passive also begins with have, has, had, but have and has, it depends upon the subject you're changing it to in the beginning of the sentence in the passive voice. And then what will you add? You will add been in the passive voice. So look at this. Have you sent the mail? So here, why am I changing it to has? Because the mail, isn't it, singular? So with singular, third person, what will you use? Has the mail, what did I add there? Been has been added. Has the mail been sent by you? This is the passive voice. So how is the change? Has the mail been? What are you doing there? What are you adding? Been, B-E-E-N, been. Remember, wherever you have, has, had, the perfect, present perfect, past perfect, you add been in the passive voice. Then the next one, has he submitted the check? Same, has the check, because singular. Has the check been submitted by him? Okay. Had he returned the book? Had the book been returned by him? Okay, is this clear? So wherever you have, has, had, same thing, even in the passive voice, you will use have, has, had, but either you will use have or you will use has, depending upon the change that you have brought about, depending upon your subject, the number there. And then you will add been after that. Clear? Then the next one, you remember modal auxiliaries. So what are the modal auxiliaries? Quickly recall them. Yes, will, would, shall, should, can, could, may, might, must, ought to, need to, etc. Okay, so those are the modal auxiliaries. So what should you do when you have a modal in the active voice? You will add be in the passive voice. Same modal will be repeated in the passive and you will add be. Okay, so can he paint pictures? So how will you begin your question with? Can, same can will be repeated. Now pictures you will add, you will change it to that it becomes a subject. Can pictures be painted by him? He becomes the agent, so by him. Will he write a letter? Will a letter be written by him? Okay, so these are the changes that you have to bring about when you're transforming interrogative sentences from active to passive. Is it clear? Now you have the exercises. So these are the sentences. Read and transform them to passive voice. First one, what did you buy yesterday? Look, you have what and then did. So which tense? Past tense. So what should you do? You should repeat the same question word WH. Okay, and then what are the changes you should bring about? Did you meet your friend? Can you eat this? Who directed that movie? Have you completed your assignment? When do you visit your parents? Why did you give me a gift? Have you visited the Taj? Will they write the exam? Do they teach children? The next one, same continuation, transformation from active to passive. Who makes toys? Whose drafter are you using? How many books did you buy? What did you do during lockdown? When does he study science? Where do they sell car accessories? Why do they use the phone all the time? Should we sanitize the surroundings? Will they teach the students online? Must she wear a mask? Okay. So you have to transform from the active to the passive voice. Now it is the reverse. You have also learned this. You have done quite a few exercises. Transformation from passive to active voice using all those rules. You have to apply the rules, right? So here also you are given in the passive voice, change it to the active. Where are your clothes bought by you? How many pencils were taken by them? When will the results be declared? Will the meeting be attended by you? Had the building been designed by you? By whom were you given this letter? What was given to the patients by the doctor? Why has that poster been pasted by them? Should the test be passed by me? Have you been taught economics by them? So read it and complete the exercises that have been given to you. So once again, let's quickly recap what we have done today. So you have learned transformation of interrogative sentences from active to passive. So you have learned all those WH words. When you're transforming from active to passive, all the WH words like what, when, where, why, whose, they remain the same. Only changes with who. Who changes to by whom in the passive voice. And then whatever you have done in affirmative sentences, same rule applies here also. Okay, like if your question begins with, what do you do? Look at the tense. Do is used for the present tense. So use the be form verbs there when you change it to the passive voice, present forms, depending upon your subject. Right. Then what was the next one we did? Yes, if it begins with be forms, am, is, are, and all that, then in the passive voice, same you will use am, is, are, was, where, you know, and then again, it depends upon the subject and the tense that is given to you in the active voice. And what will you do? You will add being, B-E-I-N-G, being in the passive voice. Okay. And then the next one we have learned was have, has, had. When you use that in the passive voice, same have, has, had. Again, depending upon the subject, you will use either have or has. And then you will add been. All right. And all V3 forms in this. Okay. Then what was the other one? When you use modal auxiliaries, same modal will be repeated even in the passive voice, but you will add be, should be, okay, can be, will be. All right. So that is how you will be uh, changing it from active to passive. Here, what will you do? When will you add be after the subject? Should the what is that, equipment be returned? Okay, so that is how you will transform all the sentences, go through all this and the exercises given in your workbooks. Okay, so that you are thorough. This is very easy. Remember to learn all the tenses. Be thorough with your tenses. That is the V1, V2, V3 forms, especially the past participle forms of irregular verbs. Learn them, by heart them, so that it becomes easy for you to transform your sentences, right? Is this clear? Okay, thank you.